Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom, and you can pre-order all of the Strixhaven cards you need right now by heading over to cardkingdom.com.
Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it is time for one of my favorite videos every season, and this go around we actually have two of them. We are talking top 10 Commander cards, first up from Commander 2021, but we're also going to do a Strixhaven video, and of course, like usual, I'm joined by Tomer. How's it going today, Tomer?
Hey Seth, how's it going? I'm really excited for this one.
I am really excited for this one too, and we got a bit of a new twist this go around. In the past, we kind of had more or less Tomer's top 10 list, and then we both talked about it. This time, Tomer, we're doing things a little bit differently. What's the twist for this spoiler season?
We're gonna be fair and balanced, so it's gonna be my top 5 and Seth's top 5, and if you add the two chunks together, you get a whole top 10. But yeah, so it's going to be half and half. We're going to go back and forth. My 5th highest pick and then your 5th highest pick. And it's going to be balanced. Yeah.
And should also say, these are cards that we're personally excited to play from Commander 2021. This is not supposed to be a tier ranking in the sense these are the most powerful cards. These are the cards that we just really like from the set. At least I know for me that's how it was, and I think that's normally how you do it as well. So if you're looking for cards most likely to succeed in CDH, this is not the top 10 list for you. But if you want to see some fun cards we're excited about, that's what we're going to be covering today. So are you ready, Tomer, to count down our top 5/top 10 cards from Commander 2021?
I am so ready. Let's do it, Seth.
All right, so number 5 on Tomer's list, and it's Tomer's list because I made fun of this card really hard when we talked about it last time. Spawning Kraken. Tomer, is this a 6-drop tribal card, or is it more than that to you?
Oh man, it's a 6-drop tribal card, but it's a fantastic card in its own right. And I know you don't like it, that's why I had to put it on the list. So Spawning Kraken, this is a 6-mana blue 6/6 creature Kraken, and it has a very, very powerful ability. It says whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 Kraken creature token. So, even by itself, imagine this. This is a 6/6, and it hits somebody in the face, and you create a 9/9. So now you have a 6/6 and a 9/9 for 6 mana. Then, on the subsequent turn, when you attack with now your Spawning Kraken and the Kraken that you just spawned, both of them deal with combat damage. You're dealing 15 damage, and you generate 2 more 9/9 Kraken tokens, and it goes crazy. So that's pretty exciting to me. I love just the idea of it, but it gets even better. If you're in a Serpent tribal deck, a deck that is full of Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents, and you play this, and then you just swing with the team. Woof, you're gonna make so many 9/9s. And then changelings, obviously, if you have a mirror entity on the battlefield and you turn all your creatures into Kraken / Leviathans, Octopus, and Serpents. Ah! It's so fun!
Is this the top 5 Tomer cards for tribal? Do you just rank
so
cards
good.
based on how good they are for that deck?
It's so good.
I will say, I know when we did the spoiler video, I was pretty down on this card, but in the spoiler video, we were talking specifically about the precon deck, and I actually think that Spawning Kraken is a sweet card for specific decks. I am not as high as Tomer on the just jam this as a standalone threat idea. Yeah. However, I do think if you're playing Krakens, Leviathan, Octopus, Serpent, sea creature tribal or anything in that area, I think this is an auto include and probably going to be one of the sweetest and most powerful cards in your deck. Also, you got token shenanigans. I guess maybe that's the other home. We've seen kind of this push towards Simic tokens with the precon deck, and also somewhat in the main Strixhaven set with fractals and so forth. And if you're playing a token theme and doing doubling season and parallel lives, then this can make a ridiculous amount of power really, really quickly.
Yeah, I would still argue with you that it's still very good in the precon that we had, the Quandrix Quandary with Adrix, because with Adrix on the battlefield, each time you're making making 199 with the creature token, or however many you make. You double that with Adrix. Really good with Parallel Lives, as you said. Also really good with populate cards. Like if you are in a Bant deck version of tokens, any card that says populate, like the bigger the token you can populate with, the better it is, right? So you cast a card with populate, and you make from 199, you make another 99, and then it's also Kraken, and you have the spawning Kraken, you make more 99s. I love this card. It's so good.
All right, let's move on to my number 5 card. We have, oh my goodness, I absolutely love this card, Tempting Contract, and I am under no illusion that Tempting Contract is like a broken card, but it is one of my favorite designs that Wizards has made in a long time. So it's a 4-mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent may create a treasure token. For each opponent who does, you create a treasure token. And the thing I love about this card, we've seen like tempting cards in the past where like you do something, then your opponents can do something, and then you get to do that thing again if they choose to do it. Well, the difference here is Tempting Contract, it does literally nothing. Like you don't get one treasure a turn and then more if your opponent does something. All you gotta do is convince your 3 other players at the table to not ever take a treasure token and just pretend like this card doesn't exist, and it won't do anything, like literally nothing. It's a Darksteel relic or whatever, just this artifact that has no words on it. If you can do that, the thing is, it's Commander, and that's never going to happen because you got the politics and you know what's going to happen. You're going to have the one person that's going to be like, oh, I really need this mana for one turn. Don't hate me, everyone. And then the next person's going to make like spite tokens because the first person made one. And then you're going to have me who's just like, whatever. I'm making a token every turn.
You're the first person. You're the first person.
I
really need the mana. I need to draw more cards. What if I draw more cards and I'll need the more mana?
So I just love that this design, it really should do nothing, but in a lot of play groups, it's going to be making 3 treasure tokens a turn and going to be like a colorless Smothering Tithe or something, because one person's going to do it and then everyone else is going to do it, and then it just goes like that for the rest of the game.
So I agree that it's a really neat card. I like it too. It's high on my hype ranking scale as well. The only downside is that, like, if your opponents do understand how this card works and that it does nothing, if everybody can agree on doing nothing, then it does nothing. I think I personally would have pushed this card just a little bit more and said, at the beginning of your upkeep, you make a treasure token, and then each opponent may create a treasure token and keep that clause. So at the very least, even if your opponents don't opt in, you get 1 treasure token per turn cycle, which I think is more than fair for a 4-mana artifact that you have to wait an entire turn cycle before you get anything. I think that would have been a lot better because, yeah, the fact that it literally is a 4-mana do-nothing card kind of dampens it for me because, I mean, if I'm sitting against you, Seth, obviously I'm going to be, running this card.
It's a staple.
Yeah, it's a staple because I'm at least getting 1, and I'm probably going to frustrate the other 2 opponents to give me a treasure token. So I like that, but like I think if I'm not gonna jam it into my paper decks because I feel like if it's when it's bad, it's real bad. If it only had that one tweak, I feel like it still would have been a fair card. And I would have ran it more often. But yeah, I still like it. I like the concept.
I agree with you. I don't think this is a very good card for the reasons that you mentioned. I just love the politics of this card. I think that's what makes it so intriguing to me. But let's move on. Number 4 on Tomer's list. We have a card that I think we can both agree on this one. I mean, Stinging Study, it draws a lot of cards. Tomer, what are you doing with this one?
I mean, so this is a black 5-mana instant. Stinging Study says, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is the mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So basically, the higher the mana value of your commander, the more cards you're going to be drawing and the more life you're going to be losing. This card seems just like bananas for like the couple of commanders that are really, really expensive. Like I have a tribal deck. I don't know if you know this. I have a tribal deck that really? Is ran by the Ur Dragons. Tribal, yes. It's a 9 mana value commander that I have no intention of actually casting. It's an Eminence ability, very broken. It just sits in the command zone and I get all that sweet value out of it. But at that point, if I'm running a 9-mana commander, would I like to draw 9 cards at instant speed for 5 mana? Yes, please. Yes, I would. I think this is kind of bananas in any of like the higher mana value commanders out there. It's crazy good efficiency. What do you think?
I really like this card too. I think I might even be higher on it than you are. Like, obviously, if you're Ur-Dragoning or have some massively expensive commander, like, it's absurd. Like, one of the best card draw spells ever printed. But when you think about the black cards that people play to draw cards, like Ambition's Cost is like 4 mana, sorcery speed, draw 3, lose 3. Or like Promise of Power is 5 mana, sorcery speed, and a lot of black mana symbols to draw 5 and lose 5. Like, I feel like if you're playing any commander that's CMC like, or mana value, I guess, 4 or better, I would consider this. Yeah. And if it's 5 or more, I think this is almost an auto include. I guess unless you're in a color that has a lot of other card advantage, but really, I feel like this is going to show up in a lot of different decks. Like, one of the biggest and best black card draw spells we've seen, and being instant speed is really huge. Black has good card advantage, but it's mostly sorcery speed. Being able to cast this at instant speed is a pretty big upside.
I totally agree, and I think that's the correct number. Like, if you have a 3 mana value commander, I don't think I would run it. Like, I was thinking about putting it into Toshiro Mizawa, but I don't think it's good enough. At 4, I think it's a very solid card draw. At 5, it's amazing, and anything higher than that is just gravy. It's like it becomes like a Necrologia that you don't have to cast at your end step. Like, it's so silly. I love this card. It's so good. It rewards high mana value commanders, which is cool too.
Yeah, it does. That's something we haven't really seen much of. And normally I don't like cards that like refer to commanders in the command zone, but this one draws cards, so I'll give it a pass.
Draws cards and gets a pass. Yeah, exactly. we're on the same wavelength of that.
Moving on to my number 4 card, we have a really sweet new commander, Essex Fractal Bloom. So this is one of the backup Simic commanders. 6 mana, 4/4, legendary fractal. It has flying. Most importantly, the first time you would create 1 or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead create a creature. Well, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature. So this is kind of like another newish card we got in Keldheim, Mystical Reflection, which is kind of like a one-shot version of this. Well, this lets you do it every single turn, and there are some really just like explosive, crazy lines that you can get with this. Like, imagine having this down and curving into like Avenger of Zendikar, and then choosing to have all the plant tokens be copies of Avenger of Zendikar. So you're going to make like a ridiculous number of plants. Anything that can make a bunch of tokens all at once is going to be insane. And you're also in green, so you also have all the doubling seasons and parallel lives. It just seems like a really unique and fun commander to build around. And like, it can do some really explosive things. But what do you think about this one, Tomer?
I think it's a really well-designed card. I think it's incredibly flashy, which gets people, including myself, very excited to play and build around it. It's going to lead to really exciting board states. Like you mentioned, Avenger of Zendikar. Like, if you have 10 lands on the battlefield, you play Avenger of Zendikar, those 10 plants that are going to enter the battlefield, 1 for each land, are going to enter as copies of Avenger of Zendikar. So you're going to have 11 Avengers of Zendikar, 100 plant tokens, and then every single time you play a land, you trigger landfall, you put 11 +1/+1 counters on stuff. It's also really cool with Master of Waves, because each of the tokens, I believe, adds to the devotion count. So you can do something like, if you have like devotion 5, it's like, I don't know, it's like 25 tokens or horses or something like that. Something like that. I don't know. I'm not really good at the math. I'm not a Quandrix major, you know? Like, I'm not a Quandrix
It's
college.
way higher than that. Yeah. The way it scales is, yeah. I think I did it in Modern once with Mystical Reflection, and I think it was like devotion of 7, and the end result was like 100 and some of the tokens, and they're all huge because each Master of Waves is a lord that pumps all of them. So yeah, that's another super sweet synergy. And even like having this and having Tender Shoot Dryad or having a Verdant Force, just like the 1 token every turn. Yeah, that's not as exciting as these huge combo synergies we've been talking about, but still, like, have your 1/1 be a Muldrifter or an Eternal Witness or something like that. even that's a lot of just like value in a deck.
Yeah, it only happens during your turns, but I mean, if you still have a token army on everybody else's turn, that's still amazing value in itself. I think it's really easy to get the value out of it. Even the precon had Hornet Queen, right? The Hornet Queen comes with four insect tokens when it enters the battlefield. You make them all copies of the Hornet Queen. And what, there's like 16 bees and like 5 Hornet Queens. That's amazing. Biovisionary
seems good.
You know, like, so I think like there's a lot of really cool things that's working well with Essex. I feel like this is a card that you're also going to find a lot of upgrades with as we get to subsequent sets. There's going to be just more creatures or things that make tokens that you're going to get wombo combos with. But I also like that it's 6 mana and it has no inherent protection from removal, which means you can at least interact with it. Like, it's not going to come out turn 1 usually or whatever and then just like win the game. It's something that's meant to be played a couple turns later while your opponents probably are going to get ready for it if it's in the command zone. If it's part of the 99, I think it's even better because then it's like a surprise. You're like, boom, it's an Essex and everybody was tapped out there, weren't ready for it, and you just do your crazy thing. But like, I think it's a good design card. It's flashy, it's exciting, it's going to lead to fun board states, and yet it can be interacted with. So I like it. Well done.
Yeah, I really like this one as well. Well, let's move on. Number 3 on Tomer's list. Oh my goodness, this card. Surge to Victory. 6 mana sorcery, exile target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +X/+0 until end of turn, where X was the card's mana value. More importantly, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to cast a copy of the exiled card. Tomer, what does this card do in Commander?
This is like a finisher / recursion / storm spell, I think. Basically, you have just like any really powerful instant or sorcery that you want to recur. And this not only pumps up your team, assuming like you're going wine, not only does it pump up your team, but it lets you cast that spell like over and over and over again. It works really well in, I would say, any token deck that is going to run like a certain amount of instants or sorceries. You only need to have one in your graveyard that's good, right? You don't need to have a pile of them. You don't have to be a dedicated spellslinger deck. If you're in a token deck and you have like 5 or more creatures on the battlefield, you cast Surge to Victory, you give your creatures this huge pump ability, you swing, you copy that instant or sorcery a bajillion times, 5+ times. That's amazing. That's amazing for 6 mana. That's really good. It gets even better though in decks that have like extra combat spells. Like Relentless Assault, I think the name is called, where it's just like you take an extra combat. Oh wait, no, sorry, that doesn't work with it. It doesn't work with it because not your main phase.
There are some that work.
I think it's like World at War and then like Savage Beating. Like if you have those two,
okay,
it's really good. But it's better with extra turn spells, obviously, right? Like extra turn spells don't have I don't think they have like a phase restriction. So if you have something like
they do not.
Yeah, Time Warp or whatever, you copy Time Warp 5 times, you essentially have won the game at that point. It's also really good in Spellslinger decks. Like a lot of Spellslinger decks, some of the most like common archetype staples are stuff that make tokens like Talrand, Dika is a new one, Metallurgic Summonings, Young Pyromancer. There's a bunch. There's a Mystic, Murmuring Mystic, a whole bunch. So there's a bunch of ways to make a lot of tokens in Spellslinger decks, and then you're always going to have guaranteed something good in your graveyard to recur. So it's really good. I think it's a really flashy, fun, big ability that I want to cast to just crush people with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually really good too. I think, like you said, any token deck, even like Krenko or War, and then the Spellslingers deck, anything with a bunch of bodies on the battlefield, this is going to be really powerful. And I think the floor is actually pretty high. Of course, if you Time Warp 10 times, you're going to win the game. Or if you take, 10 combat steps with Savage Beating or something, you're going to win the game. On the other hand, what if you cast a bunch of like Ponders? That's like about as bad as it gets probably or something. that's still fine. You're drawing a bunch of cards. Like, yeah, it's not as exciting as I win the game, but it seems outside of getting hit by like actual graveyard hate and having it do nothing, it seems really hard for this card to even be bad. Like the best case scenario is win the game, but the worst case scenario is probably like refill your hand and draw a bunch of cards, which is still pretty reasonable for 6 mana.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be that upset with it. Like if I'm treating it like an overrun, like Red Spellslinger Overrun, I'm going to be really happy with this card. Even if I'm just copying Ponders or whatever. I don't know, this card is super cool.
Let's move on to my number 3 card, and we're staying in the world of new legends. I really like some of the new legends from Commander 2021. Eudora Grave Gardener, 5 mana 5/5 legendary tree folk druid. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. It's a forest land with no other types or abilities. So Eudora, by itself, it's kind of just interesting. Your stuff dies and it turns into ramp essentially. So I guess if you're like playing mana dorks, you can like tap the mana dork and then sack it or have it die and then get a land, which since it has no other types or abilities, you can tap right away. So it's kind of like weird, somewhat bad removal protection / like strange ramp sort of as your creatures die. On the other hand, there's some cards that work really well with this. Cards that turn your lands or all lands into creatures are absolutely busted with Eudora because the forests are not tokens. They're just face down cards. So you essentially have infinite forest creature lands if you play like a Life from Limb, and there's like 5 or 6 of these cards that either turn all of your forests or all of your lands or everyone's lands into creatures, and then you can do all kinds of things. Like you have resilience to removal. Your opponent kills your forest land creature and it just comes back into play. You can sack them infinite amount of times if you want to for like aristocrat synergies. You can sack them to generate mana if you can give them all haste. Plus, if you're Richard and you want to be really mean, you can just like turn everyone's lands into creatures and then cast a Wrath or something, and all your lands are going to come back because of Eudora, but your opponent's essentially going to lose their entire board. So I think there's some really sweet shenanigans with this one.
I totally agree with that. I feel like this deck is Eudora is all about like combos and really cool synergies. There's another one that there's another like archetype that a lot of people have quickly pointed out about Eudora that they're hyped for, and that's Morph. Any card with the Morph mechanic, or I guess Mega Morph mechanic as well, but we don't talk about that. It still works if it's face down. Whenever the card is face down, it still has that ability inherent to itself. So if you have a Morph card that dies, Eudora turns it face down as a forest, and then anytime afterwards, you can just choose to flip it over for its Morph cards. So it's like, again, it works very well because you're constantly getting, you can basically like morph something down, flip it up, use its ability, sacrifice it, flip it down as a forest, use it as ramp. When you want to flip it up in response to something, you flip it up in response and it's now a creature again, you sack it, you turn it back into land. That sounds really fun to me. Like, imagine just how much Willbender shenanigans you're going to get out of that. Obviously, you're just constantly a Willbender's constantly activating, flipping up, ruining somebody's life, turning back to the forest. Somebody forgets what the forest is. It's a Willbender. Surprise, boom. So
it's always, the forest is always a Willbender. We've already learned that.
Pickles Lock just got even more pickly, like... It could be really fun in like Kadena and Animar if you're doing Animorphs too. So there's just a lot of fun things you can do with Eudora. And I think the design space is also just really cool. Just turning creatures into forest face down. I just think this is a fun design. I think it's a really cool card.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about the morph thing. That makes it even more exciting, and then you can benefit from all the morph payoffs. So yeah, this is one of my favorites. I could definitely see building around this as my commander with the like animate lands shenanigans, or as you mentioned, playing it in the 99 of various morph decks. So lots of homes for Eudora potentially. Let's move on. Number 2 on Tomer's list, we have Alibu Ancient Witness, a new Boros legend. Tomer, why don't you tell us about this one?
So this is a Boros, or as we're calling it right now, Seth, Lorehold. It's a Lorehold.
I'm not calling it right now or ever, but continue.
It's a 5 mana Lorehold 4/5 legendary artifact creature golem. Other artifact creatures you control have haste, and whenever one or more artifact creatures you control attack, Alabu deals X damage to any target, and you scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifacts you control. So this is basically an artifact deck, Boros artifacts, which red is a primary color for artifacts, but we don't really see that same level of support in Boros colors, which is really neat. And this also really cares about artifact creatures, which is also really interesting because artifact creatures is a narrow subset, and you don't really have a lot of decks that focuses specifically on artifact creatures. There's some blue decks that turn artifacts into creatures to smash face with, like March of the Machines and whatnot, but you don't really see it much in Boros, which is really cool. And there are some really cool artifact creatures that go really well with this. So this is basically like, you play a bunch of artifact creatures, it gives them haste, so they're immediately smashing face, and every single time you're attacking, Alabu does a massive amount of damage. It counts not just artifact creatures, tapped artifact creatures, it counts all your tapped artifacts. So if you just have a bunch of mana rocks that are tapped down, it counts those as well. If you have, like, let's say a way to tap down your treasure tokens or any other token generator that makes artifacts, like Saheeli, the War of the Spark Saheeli makes just a bunch of servo tokens, and if you tap them all down to use stuff like not Unwinding Clock, but Clockwork Omens, Clock of Omens, stuff like that, those type of shenanigans, then you can have a bunch of tapped artifacts, and you could do a ton of damage. You can easily do like deal 10 damage to somebody's face, scry 10, or maybe even a lethal amount. Also, a really good artifact that goes well with Alabu perhaps is maybe a grafted exoskeleton. So you're dealing, infect damage. So if maybe you just do 10 to somebody's face, that's pretty fun too. I think
that'd do it.
Yeah. They'll do it. It's also like Mere Battlesphere is like, it's a 7/7, and when it attacks, you can tap down the other mirror tokens that it enters the battlefield. I think it's 4 that enters the battlefield, so you're immediately doing like 5 damage just with a Mere Battlesphere. It seems fun, and it's a new design space, and I like it. I like it, Seth. It looks good.
I think this is actually a really cool card. Like, we haven't seen cards that care specifically about artifact creatures, as you mentioned. So I think we're kind of like pushing into a new area. We see lots of artifacts in Commander, mostly mana rocks and like utility artifacts, but there's not that many like artifact creature themed decks. So that's really unique and cool, but in and of itself. And then this is just a legitimately scary threat with the amount of damage it can deal. You mentioned grafted exoskeleton, also great with any sort of damage doublers because it's actual like damage. So you can stack up your Furnace of Wrath and things like that and really go to town and potentially one-shot people. So yeah, I mean, I like this card a lot too. It's a little aggressive for me, maybe a little too likely to kill people, but those issues aside, it does seem like a really unique and powerful commander.
But Seth, it scries towards your card draw, right? You can find your card draw. You can find your Wheel of Fortune with it.
I mean, some people say that scrying is worth like half of a card drawn. So if you scry 10, it's basically like you drew 5 cards. So if I think of it that way, I like it even more.
Yeah, your opponents will die, but I mean, you'll get to scry a lot. So there's that. It balances out, I think.
I'll need to play like some fogs or something, like Holy Day, to keep my opponents alive from my attack so I can keep scrying.
Well, you could just like blow up, one random 0/1 that they have and be like, haha, I got you. I'm being nice.
All right, moving on to number 2 on my list. We have Viren, Voice of Duality, which is kind of just like a Panharmonicon. It's Spellslinger Panharmonicon. 3 mana 2/2, a Freet wizard in the Izzet colors. Magecraft, when you cast or copy a spell, it gets +1/+1. Who cares about that? More importantly, if you casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability on a permanent you control to trigger, you trigger that ability an additional time. So that's the kind of like Panharmonicon-esque text. Definitely works a lot differently than Panharmonicon. However, there are a lot of things that trigger when you cast spells. We have like Magecraft, we have prowess abilities, we have those abilities that are not like keyworded. There's things that draw you a card when you cast a spell, like Niv, now you're drawing 2 cards. There are things that make tokens, like Telrand or Kaikar, now you're making double the tokens. There's actually a lot of things that this can do, and the upside of this is it triggers from casting an instant or sorcery. One of the downsides of Panharmonicon is the good Panharmonicon things are a lot of mana. Like if you want to play a Cloud Blazer, that's 5 mana. If you want to play a Muldrifter, that's probably 5 mana. This, once you get it on the battlefield, all of a sudden your Ponders are sort of like triggering your Panharmonicon, so you can chain together cheap spells and really go off. And then I guess that's where that first ability also comes into play. As much as I'm not a fan of killing people, but it's going to make it really big, and then you can like attack people and maybe kill them. But Tomer, you're the spell slinger expert. What do you think about this?
I think you nailed it. I mean, there's so many spell slinger support cards that trigger off you casting instants or sorceries. There's more than you can fit into a deck, I think, right? So if you put Veyran and you just shove her into the 99 or as a commander, basically any Izzet Spellslinger deck, you're going to immediately get a ton of value out of it. So if you put it in Calamax, if you put it in Kaikar, if you put it in Mizzet Perun, if you put it as the commander, it's hard not to see an insane amount of value out of it. And also, I do like the first part of the Magecraft, especially if it's a commander, because essentially the Magecraft ability gives Veyran +1/+1, but the second ability says that you double it, so you're actually getting +2/+2. So you're not too far away from casting 6. You cast like 6 or so spells in a turn, and then you can start two-shotting people just with Veyran, or you add like a double strike ability, and then you one-shot somebody pretty easily too. So I think that's pretty good. Like I forget the name of it, Teamer something. It's a 2 mana double striker.
Oh, Teamer Battle Rage.
That
Yeah,
could be a good
Teamer Battle
finisher
Rage.
for it if
And
you want it. It also gives a trample too. So like,
Yep.
yeah, there's a lot of ways that Veyran can be like kind of Voltron-y, but I'm totally with you, Seth. Like, I just want to dirtle with a bunch of stuff. Maybe finish with a 1,000-Year Storm because that doubles the triggers, and then maybe win with an Aether Flux Reservoir, which was the best Storm payoff card. So
yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. Like, sure, maybe sometimes I'll have to kill someone with it, but really, I just want to dirtle around and do sweet things. And this card dirtles around and does sweet things, either as your commander or, as you said, in the 99 of a lot of decks. There's a lot of popular commanders that just happen to work with this because they have static abilities that trigger when you cast instant or sorcery. This feels like an auto include in the 99 of any of those decks as well.
it's 3 mana. I can't believe it. It's so cheap.
Yeah, so cheap. Well, let's move on to our first number 1 card. We have Tomer's number 1 card, and I'm glad this is on our list. We have Ink Shield, basically just a fog, right, Tomer?
It's kind of a fog, yeah. So this is a 5 mana Silver Quill Orzhov instant that says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn. So if a lot of people are getting attacked at the same time, not you, then only the damage to you is being prevented, which is the only one that's important, right? This is actually a little bit upside on a normal fog, but it gets so much better. It's not just a fog; it has a nice upside. For each 1 damage prevented this way, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. So let's say you get attacked, and just a modest 10 damage, which happens all the time in Commander. Modest 10 damage. You make 10 2/1 creature tokens with flying. You have 20 power on the board with evasion. Or you have 20 skull clamps. I don't know. You draw.
That's a lot of cards.
Yeah. You draw like 20 cards easily. So yeah, this card is very flashy. I think this is the type of card that gets me really excited because you can kind of play politics. If maybe you're the arch enemy at the table, unfairly, unjustifiably so. And everybody's just picking on you, then maybe you should run Ink Shield and you just hold up that 5 mana and they'll think twice about it because the first time they attack you all out and just casually doing 20 damage to you or whatever, you make a massive army at instant speed and then you kill them and then they'll think twice after every single time. You're like, oh, he has black, white, and 3 mana up. Could be Ink Shield. It could be Ink Shield. And that's what you want to get in their brain. You want to get in their brain that fear that it's Ink Shield every single time. But like the first time it's going to happen, it's going to be glorious. I'm so excited for it. I really want to get people with it so bad.
It reminds me a little bit of like Deflecting Palm, which this is like a very different version. But if you ever have played like Modern, and I definitely had a game where I attacked for lethal with an Emrakul against a burn deck, and I was like, yeah. And then they had Deflecting Palm, which like prevents the damage and directs it back to you. And I just died to my own attack. That's what's going to happen with this a lot of the time. Like, it seems really easy for this to be one of the scariest token producers ever printed. Like, this is often easily going to be, 5 mana make 10 power flying creatures. And there will definitely be times in a commander game where this is making 20 of those tokens, enough to just one-shot someone. So it really is going to make people think twice about attacking you, because there's a reasonable chance that the person attacking is going to be the one that ends up dying on that turn cycle because of the tokens from Inkshield. The only thing I think that keeps this from being like broken, maybe that's not the right word, but 5 mana is a lot. Like, there is a lot to be leaving up. So I think if you're playing this, you're going to want to have other things to do at instant speed, because the ultimate feel bad is like you're leaving up 5 mana and then I attack Richard instead of you for some reason. And then you're like, oh, like I just kind of skipped my turn more or less and didn't get any value out of it. So I think the more other things you can have in your deck that you can cast at instant speed, the better Inkshield gets.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just jamming into a regular like tap down and go type style deck, you're going to be pretty disappointed, because if you hold up 5 mana and you don't get attacked, then it kind of sucks. But if you're like a draw go deck and you're just constantly keeping up mana, maybe you're like a Furia deck or something like that, Furia Spellslinger or something like that, then you're going to get a lot of value of it. Or if you're like a Monarchy deck, for example, like Queen Marchesa, and you're holding the crown and people are going to go for you for the crown, and you might have some blockers, so they have to commit a lot. You could be like, all right, no blocks, Inkshield, boom, you got. So I think like Monarchy is really good for it, and Flash style decks, instant speed shenanigans are good.
The other place that I like it is just in token decks. Like, in a token deck, just play it as a token producer. Like, even if you're getting attacked by 5 power worth of creatures, this is going to make more power in tokens, and they're evasive than your whatever Secure the Waste or White Sun Zenith or anything like that. So I think it also seems really good for token strategies.
And if you don't get attacked, you could just White Sun Zenith, or you could Secure the Waste. So both are instant speed. So like you could definitely go. You could go just like, what's it called? You could go draw go tokens. Like, that's a thing. Yeah. There are a lot of instant speed ways to make tokens. And at the same time, like, not getting attacked is not a bad thing. I didn't want to make it sound like that either. Like, there are times when just the threat of this is going to keep people from attacking you. And that's hopefully going to keep you alive until you find your wrath or something. So while it can be disappointing to leave up 5 mana and like kind of waste that mana, at least you're not getting attacked. So it still kind of did its job if you don't end up getting attacked as well. And when you do get attacked, oh baby, everybody will remember that moment.
Yes, you got him. And I just love that you can untap and be like, hey, you shouldn't have attacked me. Like, this is on, there's 40 power flyers coming in your face to kill
yourself.
you. That's on you. Yeah. Not my fault. Well, let's move on to my number 1 card. And this is, I think, my favorite Boros commander, Lorehold commander, I guess, that is ever been printed. Oscar the Reconstructor. So 4 mana, 4/4, legendary giant artificer, vigilance. You can pay 1, sack an artifact to pump a creature +2/+0. More importantly, you can pay X and tap it to exile an artifact with mana value of X from your graveyard, and you create 2 tokens that are a copy of the exiled card. Activate it only as a sorcery. So Oscar, the most exciting part of it is that copy artifacts from your graveyard ability. That ability is ridiculously powerful. Like, it works really well with a lot of cards that already see play in Commander. Like, even think about Soul Ring. You play a Soul Ring, you tap the Soul Ring for 2 mana, you spend 1 mana to sacrifice the Soul Ring and pump something, then you pay 1 more mana, tap your Osgir, exile the Soul Ring, get 2 Soul Rings. Even something as simple as that is really absurd. Like, that's a lot of ramp. And then when you start including things that like sacrifice themselves, like lotus petals, for example. Your lotus petal all of a sudden turns into a black lotus. So there's tons of ways to get value there. Plus, you can just dirtle around. Like imagine your solemn simulacrum coming down, tutoring out a land, then you sacrifice it, then you get back 2 solemns, and you draw 2 cards, and then you get 2 more lands. I love everything about this card. This is a Boros commander that it feels Boros to me, very Boros, but it also is all about dirtling rather than just being aggressive and killing people. Plus, it's really powerful. What is there not to love about Osgir? But Tomer, what do you think of this one?
I definitely agree. There's a lot of like, I feel like Osgir's power comes in different, like it scales very well throughout the game. Like early game, you want to copy your ramp spells, right? It's also really good with the artifact lands. I think there's 3. There's Darksteel Citadel, there's Ancient Den, and there's Great Furnace. So you could like play the Great Furnace or any of these artifact lands. You can tap them, pay that mana to sacrifice them, and then tap Osgir for X equals 0. And then they make 2 copies of Darksteel Citadel or whatever, and that's boom, that's land ramp, right? And you can immediately use them for something else. So you're already using that early game. You're copying the Sol Rings, you're copying the artifact lands, you're copying like your mana rocks or whatever. Late game, you're just dropping Mirror Battle Spheres. You're dropping maybe swords. You could add just a bunch of different swords, and now you get double the sword action, and you suit up your entire team. There's a lot of ways you can get a lot of value out of it. So he's good at any stage of the game. He scales really well, very mana efficient in what he does. And also, if you need a sack outlet for your artifacts for whatever reason, you have one in the command zone now too. So I think it's just a great, well-designed card. Pretty fair. I think there might be combos. There's always combos with something, but I think it's just like a great value engine that you can just dirtle around with, and then very easily scale into the late game and just start beating face by copying just massive value artifacts, and it's really good. I like it.
Most importantly, this is the way you can turn 1 Panharmonicon into 2 Panharmonicons, and little did most people know, Panharmonicon also triggers from artifacts. Usually it's creatures that you see seeing play with it, but it doubles up your artifact triggers as well. So you can, I just want to like Ichor Wellspring. Ichor, that's it. I don't want to do anything scary. Like Ichor Wellspring, draw a card, sack it, get it back, draw 2 cards with my 2 Panharmonicons from my Osgir. That's all I want. That's it. And then you can also sack eventually all the token copies that you made to Osgir to maybe one-shot someone, like a Tagatog style, essentially, like getting 1 evasive threat and just spending all your mana to sack a bunch of these things and just hit someone for 1 attack and eventually win the game.
Yeah. Also, like good with like Cathodion effects too. Like you sacrifice it, make mana, some mana rock, and then make copies of it, and you have double mana things. It has a lot of potential. I'm excited to see what people brew with it for sure.
And I believe that brings us to the end of our top 10 commander cards from Commander 2021. So, Tomer, thanks so much for hanging out and doing this. It's always a blast.
Thanks for having me. I love doing these.
And thanks to everyone for watching. So you've seen our 5 favorite / 10 favorite cards from Commander 2021. What do you like from the set? What are you most excited to build around? What are you looking forward to? Let us know in the comments, and make sure to check back tomorrow in the near future for our top 10 cards from Strixhaven proper for Commander. So that's coming up shortly. So until then, everyone, have an amazing day, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking the like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to watch similar videos, click on the links appearing on screen right now.